into the belly of the beast. Hit that subscribe button if you dare step into the shadows, because once you're inside, there's no way back. Sirens wailed somewhere beyond the razor wire as the transport van lurched off the highway and onto a private service road hidden from public view. Through a slit of bulletproof glass, Marcus Kane could see the outline of the fortress rising ahead, a black mass of concrete and steel, taller than any building he had ever known. It wasn't just a prison. It was a machine built to crush hope. Officially, it was called North Point Maximum Correctional Facility. Unofficially, guards and gang leaders alike whispered a different name: the belly of the beast. Marcus wasn't a lifer. He was a low-level getaway driver who had turned state's witness after a botched armored car heist left 2 people dead. The plea deal promised him protective custody, but protective custody inside North Point meant sharing walls with the same men he had testified against. As the van rolled to a stop at Checkpoint Delta, Marcus's wrists trembled inside steel cuffs slick with sweat. A guard in riot gear swung open the door, his visor reflecting nothing but Marcus's own wide eyes. Inside the intake tunnel, fluorescent lights flickered like dying stars. A strip search, a delousing spray, a jumpsuit 2 sizes too big, all delivered with the cold efficiency of an assembly line. Marcus's assigned number was stenciled across his chest in faded black ink, 487C. He clutched a thin mattress roll as a corrections officer marched him down a labyrinth of echoing corridors. Somewhere far off, a door clanged like a gunshot. "Keep moving," the officer barked. "You're on D Block tonight." Marcus knew what D Block meant. Even on the outside, the stories spread like urban legends. A wing ruled by 2 rival gangs, the Black Talons and the Iron Vultures, whose truce was so agile that one wrong look could spark a riot. Guards entered only in groups of 6, batons drawn. Cameras covered every angle but never told the whole story. People vanished here. Paperwork said transferred, but inmates whispered buried. His cell was a concrete shoebox with a steel bunk and a toilet bolted to the wall. Across the narrow walkway, another inmate stared at him through the bars. A man with tattoos like a map of scars, eyes flat and unreadable. Marcus laid the mattress on the bunk and tried not to meet his gaze. He had 24 hours until a federal marshal would extract him to a safe facility. One day. He just had to stay invisible for one day. But invisibility was impossible in North Point. At mealtime, Marcus carried his tray to an empty table in the far corner of the chow hall. The air smelled of bleach and overcooked beans. Conversations were low and coded, a glance here, a nod there. He caught fragments. Shipment coming, guard on payroll, code black tonight. A tall inmate with a spiderweb tattoo on his scalp dropped onto the bench across from him. "You Kane?" the man asked quietly. Marcus froze. "I think you have me mistaken." The man smiled without warmth. "Witness boy. Word travels fast. You testified. People in here don't like that." Before Marcus could answer, another inmate brushed past and slipped something under the table. A folded kite, prison slang for a note. The spiderweb man read it, crumpled it, and walked away without another word. Marcus stared at his food, appetite gone. He had thought danger would come in the yard, in the showers, anywhere but at lunch on his first day. That night, the block went into lockdown after an alarm triggered near the laundry. Marcus lay on his bunk, staring at the ceiling, the hum of the fluorescent bulb like a distant hornet. Somewhere, a prisoner whispered through the vent, a language E. F taps and knocks. Marcus pressed his ear to the cold metal, but couldn't decipher it. A few minutes before midnight, footsteps approached his cell. Not the heavy boots of a guard, but the soft shuffle of inmates in socks. A voice hissed from the darkness, "Kane, get up." 2 figures appeared beyond the bars, faces hidden under hooded sweatshirts. One held a toothbrush sharpened into a shiv. The other carried something wrapped in cloth. "You got a visitor," the first one whispered. Marcus's pulse thundered in his ears. He reached for the emergency call button, but hesitated. In North Point, pressing that button without a guard already watching could be a death sentence. "What do you want?" he asked, voice shaking. The second man unwrapped the cloth. Inside was a piece of paper, his name, his inmate number, and a single sentence written in block letters: "Time to pay your debt." Before Marcus could react, a deafening clang echoed down the corridor. The cell door's magnetic lock clicked. Open. Someone had remotely triggered it. The hooded men stepped inside. One closed the door behind them without a sound. The shiv glinted under the flickering light. Marcus backed against the wall, heart pounding, realizing too late that the guards weren't coming. And then a voice from the tier shouted, "Code Black! Code Black in D block!" Sirens erupted, red strobes flashing across the corridor. The two attackers vanished as quickly as they had appeared, melting into the chaos. Marcus stood trembling, the paper still in his hand. When the light steadied and the alarm stopped, his cell door slammed shut again. On the floor lay the cloth the men had left behind. Marcus bent to pick it up. Inside, beneath the folds, was something heavier than paper, a brass prison key marked with an engraving he didn't recognize. He stared at it, adrenaline still surging. In North Point, keys didn't just appear in cells. They were power, escape, betrayal, or a death trap, and he noticed the tiny numbers etched on its edge, numbers that matched the code on a restricted sublevel he had glimpsed earlier on a guard's clipboard. Marcus's hands trembled. Someone wanted him to open a door, but whose door, and why him? Outside his cell, the tier fell eerily silent. Every inmate was awake, listening. Somewhere in the dark, a voice whispered through the vents again, clearer this time. Midnight, basement, alone. Marcus looked at the brass key, at the note, at the locked cell door that had somehow opened and shut without a guard in sight. His one-day survival plan had just turned into a nightmare. Because in North Point Maximum Correctional Facility, nothing happened by accident. And when the basement door opened at midnight, what Marcus would find waiting there would change everything. The key and the knife edge. North Point kept time and alarms, not minutes. By the count of sirens between lockdowns, midnight slid in like a trespasser. Marcus sat with his back to the door, the brass key warm in his palm, the note folded under his heel as if paper could sprout legs and escape. He told himself to wait for daylight, for the marshals, for the version of the world where rules meant something. Then the whisper came through the vent again, distinct now, patient and low. Basement, alone. He stood. The tier was a tunnel of half-light and breathing. A cough from 3 cells down, a laugh that didn't sound amused. He lifted his mattress, stuffed the note into the lining, slipped the key inside his waistband, and waited for the next pass of the floor officer. When the shadow drifted beyond the slot, Marcus moved. 2 steps, a breath, 2 more, counting his fear to keep it from spilling. The stairwell at the end of D block smelled of bleach and metal shavings. A camera winked red above the landing, then stuttered and went blind. Marcus froze. Somewhere, someone had just cut his only witness. The door to the service corridor groaned open with a sound like an animal waking. The brass key fit an old cylinder lock that should have been retired years ago. It turned the way a confession turns, reluctant at first, then unstoppable. The basement was colder. Pipes ran along the ceiling like fossilized vines, sweating condensation onto the concrete. Strips of hazard tape flapped in the draft. He followed the arrows painted on the wall. Laundry, mechanical, records, until the paint turned to dust and the arrows vanished. A single bulb buzzed behind wire mesh over a steel door stamped S3. The engraving on his key matched the number down to the crooked serif. He turned it and stepped into a passage that didn't exist on any map, a ribcage of chain-link cages packed with evidence, ENS boxes, broken monitors, and bin after bin of things that didn't belong anywhere else. He hadn't come for anything. He didn't know why he had come at all. But a line of boxes marked incident cam failures pulled him like gravity. He pried the lid of the nearest crate with his fingernails. Inside were plastic sleeves of maintenance forms, camera serials, dates, and the same stamped signature at the bottom of every page. Lieutenant V. Lang. He knew the name from intake. Lang had signed off on the cell assignments. Another box held property logs with initials matching inmates Marcus had seen in the chow hall. Transfer reports, contraband seizures, disciplinary write-ups that ended abruptly with the word resolved. It wasn't a records room. It was a graveyard of problems that had been buried instead of solved. He reached for a slim binder labeled Laundry Access, Special. Inside was a hand-drawn diagram of the basement with routes between cages and sally ports. A note in block letters read, S3 used for night movements. Keys rotated monthly. Keep off cameras during Code Black. The handwriting on the note was the same as the one slid under his cell. Footsteps whispered at the far end of the corridor. Marcus shut the binder and melted behind a stack of monitors. The shape that rounded the corner wore correctional khaki and a face he recognized even in the dim. Kincaid, the intake officer with the visor. He walked like a man who believed the darkness would move out of his way. "I know you're here, Kane," Kincaid said, not raising his voice. "Doors locked behind you. Don't pretend you got clever." Marcus held his breath until his chest hurt. Kincaid stopped at the laundry access cage, slid it open, leafed through the binder, and smiled without showing teeth. "Good. Didn't take you long?" He turned, letting the silence stretch. "You wanted protection. Congratulations. You in the safest place in North Point. No cameras, no paperwork, no witnesses." "Why?" Marcus stepped out before he could talk himself into hiding again. "Why me?" Like and subscribe to get notifications immediately the new video released.